gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for May 18th, 2023. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Mess Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, it's Global Accessibility Awareness Day, and it's also time to start talking about GTA 6 again. But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host of Game Mess Mornings. It's Grant Stoner. Grant, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining me, man. I was happy when you reached out and you pointed this out to me. I'm like, yeah, let's get you on the show. It's something like I would love to do more for this sort of thing, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. But I'm like, yeah, you mentioned that. I'm like, let's get you on Game S Mornings and just talk about it. And then thankfully Sony had some news about that as well. And we'll get to that here pretty soon. But Grant, tell me about yourself and tell us a little bit about Global Accessibility Awareness Day so we can just get people on the same page as us.
Yeah, so I'm a journalist focusing on accessibility and the disabled perspective in gaming. A lot of my work explores studios and the innovations that they do to allow disabled players to play. A lot of my reviews explore accessibility from a mobility perspective. So people with disabilities like mine, neuromuscular, how the game works, how the options benefit them, and also how the game plays if you didn't have any of those options. So I explore things like difficulty, control remapping, and just the overall design to see if disabled players can be comfortable in purchasing new titles.
What is the it seems like from a mostly outsider's perspective, I'm definitely like everyone else, I'm someone who benefits from accessibility options, so like of course I interact with that stuff, but from that perspective it does seem like things are getting better and yet still very far from perfect. Is that accurate about where things are right now?
Yeah, I would say when I first started in 2019 writing about this for a living, it was still very, I don't want to say niche, but not as popular as it could have been. And within the 4 years that I've been doing this, we've seen a massive innovation boom from major studios to indie studios to studios across varying countries. A lot of developers are actively incorporating accessibility options and design practices into their games.
And it's something that there's no one like silver bullet solution to accessibility, but is there maybe a more silver bullet mindset that you've seen developers adopt that brings them to the right solutions for a variety of issues?
Yeah, it's sort of strange because there won't ever be a game that's fully accessible for everyone, just because of how many disabilities there are and just the way that the disabled experience is for each individual. But as long as developers keep the mindset of design with accessibility from the beginning of production, use options to benefit gameplay, but not as the only solution, and just continuously keep open communication with the disabled community. So use consultants during the design phase, use accessibility reviews for post-launch updates, just see what the community needs on social platforms like Twitter and YouTube and what have you, and just keep that level of awareness throughout all stages of the development.
This is the kind of thing where, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Yeah, let's have Grant on for that day. But beyond, when you're not advocating or covering gaming from this perspective, from your perspective, what else are you interested in? What else gets you excited?
I am probably one of the biggest fans of the Pokemon franchise.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
You
So they just
you doing Nuzlocke runs out there or what?
I do. I have done them before.
Awesome.
They're awful. I love them so much. Yeah, they just announced today home support for Scarlet and Violet, which I'm very, very excited about.
Yeah, I was going to include that in the news, but I'm just like it's weird to me that home support wasn't there from the beginning, but I guess that's probably normal. What does that mean you get to do? Does that mean you get to bring in all the Pokemon you already have in home into Scarlet and Violet?
Yeah, so you can bring all the Pokemon you have from home to Scarlet Violet. You can also, there were rumors about you can bring Scarlet Violet Pokemon to previous generations. I don't know if that's in this update, which is really cool for things like Pokemon Arceus, where certain evolutions only exist in that game. So maybe you can bring like the
Okay.
pre-evolution from Scarlet Violet back into that game.
That's yeah, I was like it always seemed like the Pokemon Company and Game Freak were backing away from having to bring every single game, every single Pokemon variation into the new games. But I think that's what happened here. Is like they took their time and now they're actually ready to do that, or as ready as Pokemon Scarlet Violet can be with the technical mess that game was when it launched. All right, very cool. Let's get into this mess. Let's go get in some news. But before we do, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you were watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Okay, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Sony's Project Leonardo accessibility controller gets a new name and more product details. This comes from Darren Bonthus at GameSpot. Sony has revealed more details about Project Leonardo, its accessibility controller, and its new official name, which is the Access Controller. Revealed earlier this year, the Access Controller aims to make gaming more accessible and easier for people living with disabilities. New information released on the PlayStation blog describes the Access Controller as having a wide level of customization, including an array of swappable buttons and stick caps, which can be used to create different layouts that correspond best to their individual requirements. The controller can be mounted on a flat surface or on a tripod. We'll have 4 3.5 millimeter aux ports that more specialty switches and inputs can be added to, and full customization options on the PS5 for button remapping and setting up controller profiles. Out of the box, the controller will come with a variety of analog sticks and button caps, as well as swappable button cap tags to easily mark which inputs are mapped to which button. Grant, this kind of thing sounds like it sounds ideal to me. Is this the kind of thing that solves a lot of the problems that the disabled community encounters?
It's really difficult to tell until we have it in our hands.
Yeah.
I will say, of the three like big studios, Sony was probably the least accessible when it came to hardware. Because with Xbox you had the adaptive controller, with Nintendo you have the Joy-Cons, which even though they weren't designed for disabled audiences, their functionality was still pretty useful. I am still unsure about things like button sensitivity, stick sensitivity, price point. That's often a major barrier for accessible gaming because a lot of disabled people lived on fixed incomes. So it depends on the initial price. If we need other like buttons or sticks that cost extra. But the more information we have now, like I saw you can adjust the stick length from the controller, which is going to be beneficial. But it's still too early to see how it will benefit people.
Yeah, it does seem like it has a lot of the must haves, right? The things that you need to have to even make this thing a potential useful object for people that are trying to play games in different ways. And that like includes like the 3.5 millimeter jacks. A lot of I think I learned with the Microsoft controller that I can't remember the name of. They had the 3.5 millimeter jacks, and it was explained at the time. A lot of the peripherals that people already use to interact with the world are all using that standard. So having those ports on there means it's easily expandable. Is that true? Is that still the case that that's kind of a standard among the kinds of things that people are using?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably one of the best additions for any piece of accessible hardware because you can use any form of a device that uses that port. And there's also a lot of organizations that specifically design parts for these controllers that seamlessly connect because of the port functionality. Warfighter Engaged is a great charity that creates switches and joysticks that can just, you purchase them and just plug them into your adaptive controller and they seamlessly function. So the more devices that have these ports is ultimately beneficial.
Uh, Sony, Microsoft both have their controllers here. Would you want Nintendo to? And this is Nintendo, so it's of course this seems like a fantasy. But would you want Nintendo to do their own, or would you want them to just say open up and say, hey, we'll just support both or either of these controllers that Sony and Microsoft are already producing?
I think either solution is fine at this point because Nintendo really doesn't have anything. They do have a third party controller that was developed by a father in conjunction with 8-Bit Do last year. It was designed for his son.
I remember
Who we
this.
actually share. Yeah, we actually share the same disease. So that's their only accessible alternative they currently have. Um, I'd be curious if they made their own controller just to see what Nintendo's idea and vision of
Sure.
accessibility is compared to, Xbox and PlayStation. But honestly, even if they were just announced, you can use these controllers now. I think that'd be a perfect solution.
Yeah, Nintendo it doesn't have anything, and their games are significantly worse when it comes to accessibility than the competition. I think for sure. I think that's almost it's demonstrable and easily proven. Have you been playing Tears of the Kingdom? Has that been troublesome because of that game's lack of accessibility features?
I actually have the special edition Tears of the Kingdom that my friend got me as a gift. But I'm probably gonna play it this weekend. From
Okay.
everything I've seen, I'll probably struggle with it. I wasn't able to play Breath of the Wild, and it looks very similar, if not slightly more complex, with some of the actions like fusing and arrow fusing and such. But I don't know. I did purchase the 8-Bit Do controller, so I'm excited to try it out with that game. But yeah, it's more than likely I'm probably not gonna be able to play it.
Yeah, I can. I mean, one of the big criticisms and big one of the criticisms you hear from a lot of people who are playing the game is the cumbersome controls, and I have definitely encountered that. I think that it's something that's like it was a learning curve for me, and then but I imagine if there's any sort of issue with using a controller normally, that is going to like just exacerbate those cumbersome controls so much. So yeah, I expect to be an issue, and then like what is to be done? Because I mean, it's not like Nintendo's completely unaware. People have asked Eiji Aonuma about this, and he said, "Yeah, this is something we thought about." And then there's no evidence of that in the final product. Is that frustrating, or is that something that you're used to, Grant?
It's weird. My opinions on Nintendo I found vastly differ from most of the disability community. A lot of times, and they're right to feel this way. A lot of times they feel Nintendo games just they aren't fair. They're not accessible to disabled audiences. But a lot of times with Nintendo, they design their games for family audiences. So a lot of the actions are simple to execute. The gameplay mechanics are relatively easy. Control schemes are relatively simplistic. So whenever they release a game like Tears of the Kingdom, which essentially uses button combinations like, an Xbox game or a PlayStation game, it really highlights just the need for more options and for more design practices and even better controllers. But overall, I don't feel Nintendo is like the worst when it comes to accessibility. Like with Pokemon, for example, I can play the entire game with one finger. no
Right.
issues. So it's not, and like with Mario Kart 8, they have options that have like auto accelerate, auto pathing that you can use. So the options exist and the gameplay exists, but whenever they do more complex games, it really shows like their age in terms of lack of accessibility.
Yeah, I think that the mentioning the Pokemon with one finger thing, it's like at a certain point, Nintendo's like determination, and then Game Freak, but yeah, this applies to a lot of Nintendo stuff and Game Freak. They're so determined to make things so broadly appealing that they are almost accidentally designing with accessibility in mind, or it is accessibility because making sure that a wide variety of people can play. At a certain point, you automatically take that stuff into consideration, and so yeah, that's interesting that works out that way. But then you're right. A more complicated game comes along, and it's just they haven't learned any lessons because they haven't actively been thinking about it. It seems like. All right, the Axis controller. They're gonna keep giving us more information as we go, but we're still waiting on stuff like price, I believe, and we'll get more of that information later. All right, next story. Mortal Kombat 1 announced for September release. It got its first trailer. This comes from Tom the Machine Ivan at VGC. Following plenty of teasing and several leaks in recent weeks, the next entry in the long-running fighting game series was officially released on Thursday. The debut trailer for the game, which is viewable, which I have a video of, I'll bring up in a second, confirms it will be released on September 19th, 2023. The NetherRealm developed title will be available for PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch, and PC via Steam and the Epic Games Store. Warner said the game, quote, will introduce a reborn Mortal Kombat universe that has been created by the fire god Liu Kang, featuring reimagined versions of iconic characters as they've never been seen before. Its story mode promises an immersive cinematic narrative featuring unexpected twists on classic rivalries and original backstories for a wide-ranging cast of legendary fighters, including Liu Kang, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Kung Lao, Katana, Melina, Shang Tsung, Johnny Cage, and many others. This is something we've heard about for a long time, Grant. They've finally confirmed it. It's got a release date, September 19th. That's coming pretty quickly. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm in the fighting game mood. The Mortal Kombat story is also one that's always pretty good. Have you seen this trailer? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I prefer Mortal Kombat over Street Fighter. I don't know if I can say that out loud, but I'm a huge Mortal Kombat fan. So I was very excited to watch the trailer this morning.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring it up for everybody right now, I think, and then mute it first. It's a really incredible trailer because it's like they do set up the story and they take it seriously, even though it's really silly. They do a great job at handling both. They've always done that, and they've gotten better at it even. And then as they're like setting up this pretty serious story, there's a break in the trailer, and then when they kind of come back from it, like, okay, as we take a breath, it's right into the ultra gore of Mortal Kombat and the big goopy sounds of blood landing on the floor. It's an amazing trailer, actually, and I'm glad that Mortal Kombat is still around and kind of still just Mortal Kombat. How do you feel about them sort of rebooting things and taking that as an opportunity to get back to the basics? Do you think that was the right move?
It reminds me of the Mortal Kombat Armageddon
Yes.
skip back in PS2 era, which I was a fan of because I thought at that point the series was like really bogged down with characters and the storyline was very complex and often difficult to follow because you had all these people fighting who half the time you weren't even sure who they were. So I was a big fan of Mortal Kombat 9 and its reboot. And I feel like toward the end of 11, it was reaching that point of there's too many people here. I just can't keep track anymore. So I'm very happy with the reboot.
I think that's exactly how they think about it too. It's the three games. They've done like this like trilogy idea a bunch of times now. Maybe even going back to like the original, where it's like, hey, all right, we're going to Mortal Kombat 3, and now 4 is going to be our first attempt at like a 3D game, and then we're going to do a couple of those, and then we'll get to we'll kind of get to 9, and then reboot at that point from Armageddon, and then do 9, 10, 11. And now they're not going to keep continuing the same thing. They are rebooting it. Now, I bet a lot of the technology has been so refined that it's mostly going to look pretty similar. but at least rebooting the story and rebooting the roster and stuff and doing some fun stuff with that. I think that's a good idea. I'm excited about it too. And it seems like a good place to jump in for what is one of the biggest fighting game franchises in terms of sales. They just sell so well. I expect this one coming out, doing the Mortal Kombat 1 thing. It seems like it has a good chance of being astronomically successful. So, yeah, I'm excited. It's quite a year for fighting games. So we got this, and then Tekken's happening, Street Fighter, and then maybe something with Soul Calibur. So a lot of cool stuff happening with fighting games. All right, let's get this next one. Oh, hang on, let's see here. After 30 years of trying, JeanClaude Van Damme is coming to Mortal Kombat. This is from Michael McWhorter at Polygon. The man behind Johnny Cage will become Johnny Cage. Mortal Kombat 1, the next game in NetherRealm's 30-year-old fighting game franchise, is traveling back in time, centuries before the events of the known Mortal Kombat timeline. Despite that time shift, series staple Johnny Cage will make his way to the roster alongside ye old ancient fighters like Raiden, Melina, Katana, and Kung Lao. Even more intriguing is the fact that actor JeanClaude Van Damme will make an appearance as Johnny Cage in MK1 thanks to a character skin. Van Damme's appearance in Mortal Kombat 1 closes a specific loop in Mortal Kombat's history because the Belgian martial artist was partly the inspiration for the original Mortal Kombat and its Hollywood hero Johnny Cage. He was supposed to be Johnny Cage, Mortal Kombat series co-creator Ed Boon said in an interview with Polygon last year. Developers at Midway pitched the idea to Van Damme, but it never panned out. Boon said, "We took images of Bloodsport and talked about digitized graphics and how it could be, how it's going to be Van Damme in the game. At some point, he passed on it, but we later inquired maybe a couple times, as recently as like Mortal Kombat 9, if he wanted to be a skin for the game. For some reason, it just never came through. Well, now here we are. I think this is pretty fun, Grant. Did you have any love for the idea of JeanClaude Van Damme as Johnny Cage?
I was a big fan of Rambo from, I think it was in Mortal Kombat 10.
Yep.
So I'm very excited for JeanClaude Van Damme. I think the more like 80s, 70s action stars they bring in, the better, because it just fits like the whole cheesy narrative and the whole fights, and so I'm very excited for this.
I think that's exactly right. That it's just a good fit for that. They have the same sensibilities at a certain point, and I think it appeals to the same part of my brain. And I agree. I like the idea of action stars popping into the game. Seems like they're also going to have the like Homelander and some other of these superheroes that are not exactly traditional superheroes. That's also going to be part of the roster as DLC characters. At least that's the rumor. I'm fine with that, but I much prefer the idea of like 80s action stars. That's way more fun to me. All right, Xbox debuts PC games to Nvidia GeForce Now members beginning today. This comes from Sarah Bond at Xbox Wire blog, and I will encourage everyone to pay attention to the order in which Sarah Bond puts the countries that she's about to talk about. We're thrilled to share that starting today, Nvidia GeForce Now cloud gaming members in the UK, the US, the European Union, and around the world can stream Gears 5, and on May 25th will be able to enjoy fan favorites Deathloop, Grounded, and Pentiment. This is just the beginning stage of our forward-thinking 10-year partnership with NVIDIA to make PC games from Xbox Game Studios and Bethesda available to their GeForce Now members. Together, we're accelerating access to players around the globe by letting them choose how and when they play the game. They're still fighting that acquisition deal in the UK, and I think their continual attempt to maybe make the CMA look a little bit silly is their strategy right now. Grant, do you think this is something that could still win over anyone in the UK, even though the CMA has already blocked the deal?
It depends on how aggressive the CMA will be going forward with Xbox. Because I think I just read the EU is potentially in support of the acquisition.
That's right. The EU did just approve it earlier this week. That sounds earlier this week. They gave their full approval with caveats, of course, but they did approve it.
So I think as long as if the CMA continues to push against it, then maybe they may have an effect. But I don't know. I don't know how to properly answer that, just because Xbox keeps pushing back, and
That's right.
it's like this tug of war with like, the CMA rejects it, but then the EU approves it.
I think you're still on the right track there, where this is Microsoft pushing back, and at the very least, if this deal goes through and the regulation doesn't ever stop it, I think people can and the regulators can argue that a lot was accomplished by standing in the way, if only for a brief amount of time. The regulators stood in the way, and Microsoft was forced to get creative and forced to look for ways to be to increase competition and to bring more companies in. And by those metrics, they would not have done this. I don't think this deal with Nvidia. At least they wouldn't have rushed it. Maybe it was something that was on a docket somewhere, but they have a million things like on their to-do list that they never really get around to. This got pushed to the top because regulators were standing in the way, and Microsoft wanted to look like they were being proactive. So at the very least, like the regulation had a overall positive effect, because this is a good thing. Having more ways to play the games that you own, yeah, like why wouldn't that just make sense at a certain point, especially for Nvidia GeForce Now, which is a service that you pay for separately to stream the games that you already own. Well, it's like if it's limited to just a handful of games that have been approved, that's kind of a bummer. Let's get more games approved, and Microsoft stepped up for that. At least I still don't know if the deal is going to go through. The CMA could still derail it. The UK seems to be pretty set on that, but for now, even if the deal doesn't go through, this is still a positive thing that did happen.
It's also really good for accessibility. Too. The one thing that I pride Microsoft or give them pride for is the fact that it's not limited to just consoles, which many disabled players can't access,
Right.
even with hardware like the adaptive controller. So more ways to play like the current games on Xbox's library is always beneficial.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a good point. Thank you. All right, let's see. Next story is GTA sells 5 million copies in past 3 months, jumps to 100 million in total sales. Got a whole bunch of Take-Two stories here, everybody, so buckle in. This comes from Luis Joshua Gutierrez at GameSpot. Take-Two Interactive, the parent company of Rockstar Games, has revealed that GTA 5 has sold over 180 million units. Even more impressive is 5 million of these were sold within the last 3 months, nearly a decade after the game was first released. The news comes from Take-Two's latest earnings report, which stated that GTA 5 has reached over $1 billion in retail sales, faster than any entertainment release in history. The report also states that the franchise has sold over 400 million units, and that active development for the next entry of the Grand Theft Auto series is well underway. I don't know how a game like this keeps selling 5 million copies every 3 months. Most games would kill to sell 5 million copies, period. Like, that's a pretty big hit for most games. 10 million, way better, but and most games don't get to that spot. This is doing 10 million every half a year and has been doing that consistently for, like the story says, a decade. Do you have any understanding of how this happens, or do you think it's just GTA Online continuing to churn in new people?
I think the GTA role-playing, the servers had a big push about a year ago with all the main streamers showing their audiences GTA again, which then renewed interest. But I don't know currently why it's jumping up so much. Because if I remember, GTA role-playing kind of died off after about a year. It was mostly a pandemic thing.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry, my mic keeps muting itself, and now GoXLR is breaking on me. Okay, we're back. Yeah, the role playing, I still see it a lot, but it's. I think it definitely peaked during the pandemic. That sounds right. But I think a lot of the people who, a lot of the Twitch creators that moved over to GTA roleplay are still very much doing that and still drawing quite a big audience. And I think it's just going to be part of GTA forever going forward. I think it's a permanent aspect of that community and that gaming series from now on. So I do wonder if that continues to man, it's just muting itself. Okay, I'm gonna have to replace this GoXLR thing. Fantastic. Yeah, so I think it's oh man, okay, man, that's frustrating. I think it's still gonna be powering. I'm gonna watch this button and watch it just turn on and mute me again. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna have to switch my mic here. I'm gonna take a second. Let me see if I can fix this real quick because I just did it again. Sorry, everybody. Bear with me. Okay. I think we're okay. But yeah, if it's not the role play, it's just the continuing success of GTA Online. And I think a part of it continues to just be, you get new hardware, you buy GTA. I think people buy the new consoles, they're just going to get GTA to test it out. If they get a new GPU, if they don't have Grand Theft Auto already, they're going to buy it. And then yeah, it's just that one game that's going to sell forever, at least until another one comes out. Speaking of new games from Take-Two, 44% of upcoming Take-Two titles are new IPs. This comes from James Batchelor at GamesIndustry.biz. Take-Two Interactive has offered more insight into its lineup for the next 3 years, pledging that almost half of its releases will be new IP. GamesIndustry.biz already reported that the Grand Theft Auto publisher has 36 titles planned for fiscal 25, the 12 months ending March 31st, 2025, and fiscal 26. And that's from an interview with Strauss Zelnick. In an earnings call with a Q&A session transcribed by Seeking Alpha, Zelnick offered more details on the company's lineup and why Take-Two is sharing forecasts for the next 3 years. It's very uncharacteristic of us to talk about the subsequent years at this time, Zelnick acknowledged. We're doing so because we've been investing in a pipeline for a long time, and we now have a great deal of confidence that pipeline will be delivered in the next 3 years. Zelnick said Take-Two will release 12 titles in the current fiscal year, as well as that 36 in the following 2 years. He added that 44% or more will be new intellectual property. That's such a specific number. Grant, do you think that this is something that is going to be a bunch of brand new giant games? Do you think a lot of those could be like Zynga games and stuff like that?
I think it's probably going to be a small handful of giant games, just because I feel like Take-Two is really going to hone in on GTA 6 whenever they announce it, inevitably. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a bunch of, like you said, Zynga games that appear and then disappear. And
Yeah, I think that whenever companies talk about we have this number of games coming out, every time that's happened in the past, when I've like that's a big number. Like, oh yeah, I remember EA said they're gonna have like 12 games or whatever, 14 games later this year, and I look at it, it's like there's one game that people that or really the kind of people who listen to this show are going to care about, and the rest are either ports or other things that no one cares about. But they're saying 44% are new IP. I bet they have a handful of new games that are going to surprise people and be pretty impressive. But it's not going to be 36 bangers. And of course not. Of course it isn't. That'd be a lot of money. And they're a company that focuses on a handful of smaller or a handful a smaller crop of gigantic games like GTA 6. And speaking of that, GTA 6 might release as soon as 2024, Take-Two suggests. This comes from Jessica Howard at GameSpot. Grand Theft Auto publisher Take-Two Interactive may have just revealed the release window for the next entry in the series, Grand Theft Auto 6. Based on statements made during Take-Two's annual earnings call, it seems likely that the highly anticipated title could launch as early as next year. In the company's annual report, Take-Two shared a staggeringly high $8 billion net bookings goal for fiscal year 25, which kicks off next April. To put that number into perspective, the company reported a record-breaking net bookings of $5.3 billion this past year. In years prior, Take-Two's net bookings has hovered around $3 billion. The company elaborated on these projections during the call, stating, "Looking ahead, fiscal 2025 is a highly anticipated year for our company. For the last several years, we have been preparing our businesses to release an incredibly robust pipeline of projects that we believe will take our company to even greater levels of success. In fiscal 2025, we expect to enter this new era by launching several groundbreaking titles that we believe will set new standards in our industry and enable us to achieve over $8 billion in net bookings and over $1 billion in adjusted unrestricted operating cash flow. We expect to sustain this momentum by delivering even higher levels of operating results in fiscal 26 and beyond." So this is a company that's going from bringing in revenue of about $3 billion a couple years ago, and they're going to more than double that, and then they expect to continue that going forward. That has to be Grand Theft Auto 6, right, Grant?
yeah, absolutely. Especially considering that GTA 5 is still raking in millions for them every year. I think if they're going to project that large of an area, that's basically soft announcing GTA 6 in the next year or so.
Yeah, it does seem like in the past, Strauss Zelnick has always been like, We don't talk about that. We let our labels talk about that. Rockstar will talk about Grand Theft Auto when it's ready. This definitely feels like they are trying to make sure that people know, hey, we're making a lot of money now. We're going to make a ton of money going forward. And I wonder what the motivation there is. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I wouldn't consider because I'm not privy to it, or I'm just not thinking about it. Maybe there's continued worries about a takeover or an acquisition, and they want to make sure that their value is as high as possible or something like that, to either fend off an acquisition or to get the money that they really want to get. All that stuff is always on the table for a company like Take-Two. And at the same time, maybe it's just, hey, they're like, no, we really want to juice the stock price now and kind of see if we could start a rally that continues through Grand Theft Auto 6, and maybe they can do that. But that's a lot of money. We will see if they're able to deliver on that. Speaking actually, you know what? Not quite yet. Let's do this one first. Take-Two boss says we will probably get mid-generation console upgrades. This comes from Jonas Maki at Game Reactor. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick had a lot to unpack during the Q4 earnings conference call, including some clear indications that Grand Theft Auto 6 might be released during next year, but this wasn't the only interesting details Zelnick had to share, as GamesIndustry.biz took the opportunity to ask him if we will get mid-generation console upgrades like the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X, to which he replied, "We probably will," while also adding that they did not affect the business very much. Both PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X were announced around this time during last generation, and if Zelnick is right, which he probably is, as both Microsoft and Sony definitely want Take-Two to optimize their games for better hardware, if there are any. We might hear more about this during Sony's showcase next week or Microsoft's showcase on June 11th. Grant, I continue to think new, more powerful hardware is a silly idea. Completely unnecessary, and not even necessarily a good business move, because we get a lot of things that are unnecessary because they're going to sell. These things probably will sell if they happen, but I just don't see the need for them at all, either from our perspective or from the gaming company's perspective. But that PlayStation Showcase is happening next week. Do you think we get a PlayStation 5 Pro announced there?
I would imagine so. I'm a little bit concerned though, because for the first 2 years of the launch, it was really hard to get a PS5. Like, even for peers in the industry, like, they couldn't secure one. So it's almost confusing that they're releasing another version instead of like just pumping out PS5s that they have enough of a slot where people can play it. I think too, for people who just want more power, they're gonna grab it, but I don't find them necessarily. I had my original PS4 through the entirety of its life cycle. I had no reason to upgrade it.
Yeah, and it's like that in that generation, the upgrades made a lot of sense, and even then, it's not like people were rushing out to go get them. They sold to a smaller slice of the audience that cared about power, like you said. This time around, Lexi in chat is saying, like, it still feels like we're waiting for next gen games. To announce something that is like more powerful before we feel like we've even really had a substantial number of, all right, here they are. Here are the games that justify all this stuff. That $500 you spent, here's what justifies that. We haven't had many of those. We've had a couple, I guess, but we haven't had many of them. And so it just feels like I would lose some trust in these companies that that the money I'm going to be spending on their hardware that investment's going to pay off in a number of games that make it worth it. It's like, well, it didn't happen last time, and I was somewhat okay with that, because it's like, well, I'm still just playing on that hardware, and there's still time for those games to come out. If you announce something new, that flips on its head, and now it's suddenly like, okay, I kind of feel like maybe I can't trust you guys in terms of like selling me hardware on the good faith that you're going to provide the software to make it make sense. But if they want to like sell hardware at a higher price, which I think is probably if they do try to do this, it won't be like, oh, and we're going to bump down the price of the PS5 to $400. It will be like the PS5 is still $500, and now here is a $600 PS5 Pro. If that's the way they're going to go, I could see them wanting to do that, because that would, for one thing, that would get them more money, which they like. It would also slowly slide up the acceptable scale of like how much hardware can cost. And I think they want to like slowly do that as they get ready over the next several years to launch hardware next generation, Because at that point, it's like, well, the PS5 Pro was $600, so the follow-up to that has got to be $600. And I think that might be part of the strategy that they're thinking about here.
It's also
Yeah, go ahead.
confusing with Xbox because they release most of their games on PC now anyway. So I don't really see a need to upgrade on that side. Maybe for PlayStation.
Yeah, and it's like, even with that like extra power of the Xbox Series X, a lot of games run worse on the Xbox Series X because the developers are treating the PS5 as their lead development platform. So it's like, we already have more power and it's not getting used. What are we doing here? Yeah, so it's a tough. I think it's a tough sell. I really do. All right. Take-Two says it's not seen pushback from players on the $70 game pricing. This is another one from Tom the Machine Ivan at VGC. During the company's earnings call on Wednesday, one analyst said there were recent examples of unnamed Take-Two competitors offering discounts on some AAA games within days and weeks of their release. Over 2 years since the $70 price point was adopted by some publishers for their current-gen games, are players still struggling to come to terms with it somewhat? The analyst asked. This is from Zelnick. We're not seeing a pushback on frontline price. What we're seeing is consumers are seeking to limit their spending by going either to stuff that they really, really care about, blockbusters, or to value, and sometimes it could be both. And the good news is we have a bunch of blockbusters and we have a wonderful catalog. One recent example of a Take-Two release that failed to meet expectation was Marvel's Midnight Suns. It came out last December, priced at $70 on PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, and $60 on PC, but the publisher discounted all versions of the game by 33% a month after release. Grant, I think all, and this is a case of everything is true, that people probably are still bristling at the $70 price tag in the instances of games that they were already a suspect of, right? Where if you're not sold on something, that extra $10 hurts a lot more, right?
Yeah, especially for disabled consumers too. Again, many of us live on fixed incomes, so the increase in game price is also limiting what we can play, on top of what accessibility options it includes and its design principles. So it's nice to see publishers individually discounting games, but the overall price increase is just, I can't really see a benefit aside from more money for developers. I don't really see how consumers are able to keep up with it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's clearly designed to just make more money for the publishers, and they're like, so. I mean, we see this is Zelda's the best case. Like, they know we'll pay more, and so they charged more, and we paid more, and no one's talking about $70 for Zelda. Everyone's just playing it, and so. I think that's most of these companies know that's the math until they put out a game that's $70 that people don't care about, and then that's when everyone says, that's weird. That's $70. I mean, like Redfall, like a big thing there. It was like, that's the first Microsoft game that's $70. And it's like, oh, in that perspective, that makes that game feel even worse in a lot of ways. But then I go play Zelda at $70 and I don't even think about it. And I didn't get a code for it. I bought that myself and everything. Didn't even think about it. All right, next story here. Get the last couple. Nvidia announces its mainstream GPUs finally. This is from an Nvidia press release from my email inbox. Nvidia today unveiled, the GeForce RTX 4060 family, delivering all the advancements of the Nvidia Ada Lovelace architecture. That includes DLSS 3 neural rendering, 3rd generation ray tracing technologies at high frame rates, and an 8th generation Nvidia encoder with AV1 encoding. Let's fucking go. I'm excited about AV1 encoding. The 4060 starts at just $299. The ultimate graphics cards for 1080p gaming, the GeForce RTX 4060 family, also includes the GeForce RTX 4060 Ti 8GB, which starts at $400, and that's coming out Wednesday, May 24th. The RTX 4060 Ti with 16 gigabytes, so even more, that's going to be $500. It's like, man, even these 4060s can get up to $500. But then the base 4060 is available in July, starting at $300. $300 used to be like even more on the high end. There was like the 760 was probably what 199, maybe even lower. I don't remember. Maybe that was like 149. They've really pushed the price up on these prices up on these graphics cards. Grant, before we got started, you mentioned you're thinking about getting a new computer this summer. Are you looking at these graphics card prices? Is the sticker shock still happening?
Whenever I examine PCs, I always treat it like I'm going to use it for years, so I may as well just buy the best, if not the second best card I can, because it's
That's
gonna
the
last
exact right
me
thing to do.
for years. I just hope that they'll actually be available to purchase. Because I remember the last set of the video cards, they were impossible to find. And people were on wait lists, people were camping out at stores, and they just weren't anywhere to be found. So I really hope for this set, it'd be a lot easier to purchase them instead of having to wait months and months for an entire new generation of cards to release.
Yeah, the good news for you is the bad news for Nvidia. Their cards have really started to sell much more poorly. Even like not even compared to pandemic, which of course that's when everyone was going wild for hardware. Even pre-pandemic, it seems like Nvidia cards are taking a big hit. And I think I only saw this headline, and it's a bit too nerdy for this show. But AMD graphics cards apparently over the last 10 weeks have outsold Nvidia cards. So the 4060 very likely will be in plentiful supply, just like a lot of the cards. I think, the 4090 is still pretty rare and things like that, but the 4090 is as much as a used car. So that's, whatever. The 4060, though, is definitely something I think a lot of people are going to jump on. $300 still a lot for the mainstream card. It really still is. But these companies worked very hard to push these prices up over the last 5 years, and they are not going to give that money back. They're going to stick with it as long as they can. If like catastrophic revenues start happening for Nvidia, they might rethink it, and but that would be a huge step backward for them in their view, I think. And so I think we just got to get used to it. These are going to be the prices. Last story here. The Analog Duo pre-orders will go live on May 19th, and they are reported to likely sell out fast. This comes from Darren Bonthus at GameSpot. Retro gaming hardware manufacturer Analog has revealed more pre-order details on the return of its popular system, the Analog Duo. Described as the ultimate all-in-one NEC video game system, the Duo features an original-style cartridge slot, controller port, and CD-ROM drive. This means that hardware is compatible with all game formats, including HuCards, turbo chips, and CD-ROM, as well as the original hardware and accessories for these games. Pre-orders begin on May 19th at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern, and the Duo will cost $250. Just thought I'd throw this in there. I like Analog stuff. I have a Mister now, so I have less need for some of these things, although I haven't tried turbo graphic stuff on there at all. Are you like one of these FPGA people that are like out there like, oh, I got to have the newest thing that actually runs exactly like the old hardware? Are you like, okay, are you like me and you're okay digging around in the emulation mines?
My emulation mines are easier for me because I can't use most of the devices.
Right.
So I'd much rather just go incognito mode and look for some emulators.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
but I did, like you say, offer controller support. So I'm curious if we can use like the adaptive controller or maybe PlayStation's new accessible controller for these games. Um,
They did. Analog 8BitDo are the same company, basically, essentially. And they said, as for accessories, you can add a $25 wireless 8BitDo controller to your purchase. I imagine that means that you could probably use 8BitDo's like adapter thing to connect wirelessly some of its controllers. I wonder if they have like a wired dongle that you can use if you want to use wired stuff, though. I don't know. It doesn't seem to say that. All right. That does it for the news, everybody. I got a poll question up here somewhere. Actually, I put it on Twitter. And let's see, there's a little time left. I'm just going to vote for Mag 2 myself. Let's bring it up here. Oh, not going to let me vote. Okay, hang on. Let me get that figured out. While I get this set up, Grant, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you have going on, all that other stuff, anything else about Global Accessibility Awareness Day that you want to promote as well, please feel free to do that.
yeah. So I guess first, with Global Accessibility Awareness Day, even though it is a singular day, I really hope that the industry begins listening to disabled voices more and more. Invite disabled voices on shows and podcasts like this. Have positions and publications dedicated to accessibility reporting. Accessibility isn't going anywhere. In fact, it's only increasing. So you're going to need people familiar with the mechanics of accessibility, how it operates, how options work, how game design works, alongside reporters who cover standard news. I also really think it's important to demonstrate that accessibility journalism and content creation isn't niche anymore. It's quickly becoming very mainstream, and we just need to continue highlighting these perspectives and highlighting these voices because, according to statistics that Phil Spencer released for 2 years in a row, there's over 400 million disabled players around the world, and that's a large audience that the industry should be covering and should be listening to and getting their perspectives on things. Um, Primarily, I'm still just writing my accessibility features and reviews. I have a monthly column at IGN called Access Design, where I write about whatever is happening currently in terms of accessibility, as well as my thoughts and opinions on current trends, conversations that I see the disabled community speaking about. You can find my work at IGN at Inverse. I tend to do features and reviews, and for Wired, I do a lot of features. Um, and yeah, you can find me on social media, just promoting my work and trying to raise awareness for the disability community.
Fantastic. Grant, thank you so much for coming on and talk about this stuff. We're going to have you back on soon for sure. I did find the poll and got it up and ready to go. What are we most likely to get from the PlayStation Showcase? Mag 2, NAC 3, Jumping Flash 4, or Layer 2? 60.5% believe in NAC 3, 22% say Mag 2, 9% say Layer 2, and 8.4% say Jumping Flash 4. I guess there was a third one that never came out here, so I went to 4. Fair enough. I have a new poll question that I'll post right now. Let's actually, you know what? We'll get a post on YouTube. But the question is, will we be playing GTA 6 next year? Yes or no? Do you believe in that? Do you think that's really going to happen? Are you getting your hopes up or not? We will answer that on Giant Bomb tomorrow. Speaking of Giant Bomb, Game S Mornings, of course, returning tomorrow. We will have later today Voicemail Dump Truck. Right after this, we are going into Blight Club. Robo Mitch has more RoboCop to get through. We're gonna let you know. I think he's done such a good job. He might earn a Blight Club wish, and you should tune in to see what that's going to be all about. Yeah, Grant, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it too.
And then everybody, thank you for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.